Today's Lower Decks episode is all about caves, and despite this one definitely being filler, it was very fun sitting there and getting to think about all of the different scenes and episodes of Star Trek that involved caves. The Lower Deckers were forced to tell cave stories trapped inside of a cave by some very pushy carnivorous moss for a show that takes place centuries into the future, has incredibly advanced technology, starships that are literally able to trek throughout the galaxy. It is kind of funny how often we do end up in a good old cave. Vendorians play a huge part in this one, previously only seen in a single episode of Lower Decks in the very early one, Envoys, when they appeared in a bar scene when they were using their shape-shifting abilities to pose as an Vandorian, but they first made their debut in the very funny animated series episode called The Survivor, where they appeared as Carter Winston, a survivor of a spaceship crash that was rescued by the Enterprise. Vendorians are these really cool tentacle creatures that have an insane ability to shapeshift, and they have historically been used as spies. And just like how the Treaty of Alderaan, bans cloaking technology from being used in the Federation, it is also said in that animated series episode that the Vendorians are not allowed to be used as spies among the different Alpha Quadrant powers, because doing so is literally seen as an act of war, and you could go to battle over such a thing. It's good to see that these sneaky aliens are finally using their powers to shapeshift and be deceptive for some good, as it seems that their new role is to entrap different strangers who are going through qualms and to put them in these morality tests. Boimler actually gets put into one of these morality tests with a lieutenant who is very infamous for being skeptical and also a conspiracy theorist, and the carnivorous moss that keeps the Lower Deckers trapped throughout the entire episode also just happens to be a couple of Vendorians trying to make everybody get along. They could easily do such a thing in their free time for fun. I think that it is a goofy and kind of clever way to repurpose a Trek species that has historically been used for nefariousness, but now it can be used to make everybody feel good and get along. One of the early jokes in the episode is about how Mariner says that all of the caves look the same and have the same properties, and I'm pretty sure that this is a dig at the fact that during the time that most Star Trek was produced, in the 90s and then also in the original series, cave sets were, I imagine, cheap to produce, and they were repurposed and reused among different shows. When the moss spit out the animal corpse and there was only some bones left, she was like, way to waste some bones, as if that carnivorous moss didn't just get done eating some clothes earlier. So if you eat inanimate objects like Tendy's clothes, why wouldn't you eat some bone? Mariner was in charge of this away mission with Delta Shift, and while on that away mission, one of the ensigns gets his leg absolutely mutilated and broken, caught in a time anomaly, which just makes it completely snap off. He wants to go back and retrieve his leg, but then Mariner does something that I think is an example of Star Trek just kind of talking too much and getting itself in trouble. Even in Deep Space Nine, like my favorite Star Trek of all time, there is over a handful of canon mistakes that are there just because the writers are just talking too much. Mariner says to the ensign that when they get back to the ship, Dr. Tiana can just simply grow him a new leg. Point in the time period, it doesn't take place that much longer after Deep Space Nine. If you remember, Nog lost his leg and had to be replaced with a prosthetic. So that means by this point in the timeline, can they truly just grow limbs and surgically put them back on? Do they not have to rely on prosthetics? And if Captain Nog, or whatever rank he is at this point, is out there in Starfleet still alive and in active duty, does that mean that he has a real leg at this point? Has me wondering whether that's just a hiccup. And then also, if they ever make a Star Trek series that takes place in this point in the timeline that kind of just rules out any plot lines where you involve your characters losing limbs or large portions of their body. Rutherford and Dr. Tiana also kind of had this funny arc in this episode where they were running through this cave system trying to evade this dangerous monster known as a Graflax. Their guide was an alien lady. She got killed by the Graflax and then touched Rutherford, died, and then had her sentience transferred into this clone that Rutherford gave birth to. This is definitely a reference to the Zerillians from the infamous Enterprise episode, The Unexpected, where Trip gets pregnant simply by coming in physical contact with a Xyrillian female. The Xyrillians were pretty lore-rich. They had a cool culture, and there were multiple little details that the Enterprise producers took the time to actually create for them, and I feel the same way about Thyrsa's species. I feel like this is the first species in Lower Decks that can kind of be explored later in a live-action format. For one thing, while it is similar to the Xyrillians, it's different because, they have to die, kind of get reborn through a fetus, and it might even be like a symbiote situation, the Trill, where the memories are transferred as well. Speaking of Trill, I truly think that the Graflax pool, where the small Graflax was chilling, I think that that's also has to be inspired by the symbiote pools in caves from Deep Space Nine, another instance where we were in a cave in Star Trek. To wrap up my review, I think I just wanted to go through all of the episodes that I personally could come up with in like 30 minutes of all the times that a cave predominantly appeared in Star Trek. I have a list here. First one, Devil in the Dark, the original series, the episode that actually inspired me to watch Star Trek, the first episode of Star Trek I ever watched. Silicone Avatar was also kind of referenced hella in today's episode for the fact that caves have properties that block communications, and that was constantly joked about. That was the episode where they had to hide in a cave on a colony planet after it was attacked by the crystalline entity. TNG's final mission, where Picard and Wesley were in that cave and they had to get to the water source. I think you could kind of draw a couple comparisons between that and the Delta shift mission that Mariner was on. Also, there was some scenes from Chain of Command where they actually had to go to some Cardassian territory and they were inside of a cave. Future Imperfect kind of takes place in a cave, and then also Picard's fake son Jason Vigo from Bloodlines had a hobby of, climbing in dangerous indoor caves on different various planets. They also went down to some caves in Voyager, like in Blood Fever, and wow, do they go into caves a lot in Star Trek. They also found Data's head in a cave in Time's Arrow. So I think there is my list of all the times I could think of where we were in caves. If you could think of any more, please leave them down in the comments. I love comments. They're my favorite thing about the platform. Today's episode is honestly just going to get a 6 out of 10. There is nothing special about today's episode. It's true filler, and the thing that's kind of disappointing me is that I feel like there's a little bit too much filler in Season 4. I think Season 4 might be wrapping up to be a weaker season of Lower Deck. Legacy, cameos, some more love to previous characters, stuff that Lower Decks has been known for. I'm probably going to see it in the season finale. I just felt like episode 8 should have had more, or it should have at least had reference to the mysterious ship that's going around and stealing all of these other alien starships. I am a little bit disappointed we didn't get to see them at all. This episode doesn't deserve anything more than a 6 out of 10. With all that being said, thanks so much for tuning into another one of my reviews. If you're enjoying any of the content on the channel, be very flattered if you were to subscribe. Once we hit 10K, I am going to film a very funny video out in public, and I'm going to dress up as a Star Trek alien. Please slap a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Skull! And I hope all of you guys have a great rest of your week. Live long and prosper.